This be crazy.
And now, a three-time sports editor, former online and managing editor, and host of Talk That Talk, award-winning journalist Terrell Chatterbox Emerson.
Welcome to it. Welcome to it. It is a little after 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. Once again, it is time for the Talk That Talk radio show. I am your host, Terrell Chatterbox Emerson. I believe this is back-to-back Mondays that we have Alex Wright of the Las Vegas Review-Journal in the building with us, my college friend. Alex, happy Memorial Day to you, brother. Time to get to it, man. I actually thought about it, and the funny thing is, this is why things always kind of balance out in the sports world, right? Or maybe in just the show world in general, in the entertainment business. We've had random shows get canceled. We know Summer League, there are going to be games that are played during the show, right? We know Mountain West tournament time, right? The show really gets kind of jumbled up a little bit. Alex has been there before. But on days like this, people like Alex and I want to tune in to the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park to talk sports for 2 hours. So we got a full slate of topics here to go. Last time we were here, Alex, on a Monday, you told me that all your high school sports coverage, which, by the way, beautifully done is this dating back to September? So what is that? I'm not a math major. I work with words for a reason, but
back to August.
Back to August, geez Louise. So you are sitting up here after 9 months, roughly, of high school coverage. Did you get a week to just chill for a little bit?
Oh yeah, I got
round of applause for that. First of all, round of applause for that.
Got winter break. Got time off during spring break. So yeah, I got some time off. Got some easy. Once you get out of football season, you get some easy weeks during basketball season and baseball season. Shout out to some of our stringers for covering some games, so I could get some nights off during the week too. So that helps.
And the funny thing is, I gave a round of applause for that because having a week off doesn't happen very often, right? So shout out to Alex for being here. I thank Alex for being here. As a matter of fact, I had 2 conversations this week with people who, if you guys follow this company around summertime, their time becomes free. So I have some other things in the works. As a matter of fact, we have a podcast lined up for right after this show. So imagine doing a 2-hour radio show and then following it up with a 2+ hour podcast. So we'll see how that goes today. But episode 33 of season 7 of the Talk That Talk radio show. This is episode 359 in totality of the Talk That Talk radio show. Again, I'm Terrell. That's Alex. If you guys want to go ahead and watch us on our social media platforms, if you guys want to watch us and just kind of be a part of everything that we do, first of all, in order to watch the live shows on Mondays 3 to 5, and then Thursday night, And you know what's funny, Alex? I think you were here last time. I keep saying Tuesdays after I say my Monday show, and I don't know if I've told you kind of the direction that I'm going. The fact that I keep letting Tuesday show fall out of my mouth,
yeah,
I think everybody kind of sees where this is going.
Yeah.
But anywho, if you guys would like to watch our live shows on Mondays 3 to 5, and then on Thursdays 10 to midnight, all you have to do is go to YouTube, go to the search bar, type in Talk That Talk Radio Show. Once again, go to the YouTube, go to search bar, type in Talk That Talk Radio Show. It's pretty much the same across every platform. That's pretty much the same on Facebook, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. The one thing that's different is our Twitter. Our Twitter is at Talk That Talk LV. Once again, guys, our Twitter is at Talk That Talk LV. Let's see if my mom has a good tip in for us as we get ready to start episode 33 of season 7. I feel like my mom has been sending me a lot of things that obviously they're all mostly inspirational. A lot of them I feel like with the conversations I'm having behind the scenes, and you know, just some of the things I'm trying to close behind the scenes. I feel like she's felt that and she doesn't even know what I'm actually in the process of doing. But her tip in the day is it's a full-time job believing in yourself. No days off. I actually just had a conversation recently about the tattoos that are on my arms. I had to figure out which one was which. But this one is won't take no loss. This one is won't take days off. Of course, those are Nipsey Hussle lyrics. I live them. I try to live them. And one thing that we just kind of had a conversation with in terms of Alex deserved those days off. So let's get back to it, man. Let's get back to it the only way we know how. I wish I had a easier way to start the show. We're starting basketball, and usually, you know, anytime we talk a sport that we have a hometown team, I'm starting here, right? So let's talk Aces. Most recently, a 20-point loss on the road at Climate Pledge Arena, 102-82 to Seattle. Their defense, though.
It was bad. I mean, it was bad. I think the broadcast, it was the first 20-point loss since August of 2023. So
That's
over a full year of not having a 20-point loss, that shows you how bad it was. And look, last year we saw them struggle on defense, or have not even by the Aces standard struggle. You know, they were still in a lot of these games. They weren't getting blown out. They weren't getting run off the court. Just teams were just having good runs, or just making good shots. And you know, yesterday, just on all these, ball screens, here on the broadcast, they were just getting mismatched and getting blown to the basket. And credit to, Seattle, they took advantage, and they made a lot of tough shots, and they it kind of exposed the Aces' weakness on defense. And we'll talk about, go into it more, but obviously it's May 26th. They've only played a few games, but in two of the games against the teams that you expect to be at the top of the standings, to have high, seeds, and possibly win a series, if not make it to the finals, they haven't looked that good at all.
And you kind of talked about it, right? And I've covered this team for a long time, going back to the Bill Laimbeer years. This showing on Sunday feels so long ago already, and maybe that's actually a good thing in hindsight, right? But that defensive performance, Seattle was on pace for 120 plus points after the first quarter, 116 at halftime. I don't know if the team will tell me. Like, I know members of the team will tell me, but I don't know in totality how many people will tell me. Maybe around All-Star break, maybe the end of the year. This might be, and I don't think I'm caught up in the moment, this might be the worst defensive performance that I've seen out of this Aces group under Becky Hammon in her 4 years. I want to know if that was the worst curse out that they got at halftime in Becky's 4 years.
Yeah, that was that had to have been a lot. And reading, Aces have had some coaching staff changes too, and bringing in some new coaches. Tyler Marsh and Natalie Nasaki going to get head coaching positions. They have a new staff, and they're implementing this this new defense. This quote from Callie Finn's story in the RJ about on Becky Hammond talking about the defense. The effort wasn't there, the discipline wasn't there. We're breaking our own rules. So until the system is ran correctly, it's really hard to make adjustments because if you don't know if plan A is going to work. So kind of tells you a lot where, she just doesn't think right now the team is following the concept and and the principles. Kind of hearing the broadcast and listen to other people talk about the Aces defense. It's kind of similar to in a way like the pack line defense that like Virginia and Tony Bennett ran for a long time and had a lot of success. So there's similarities to that defense, and it just sounds like right now that they're not either grasping it or just fully connected or on the floor together, and that's kind of lead that defensive the players kind of gel and mesh together, and that it's some new pieces, right? It's Jewel Lloyd's in there. It's you have new players on the bench. Of course, like we said, new members of the coaching staff, and it's probably going to take this team, a little longer than what maybe we thought early in the
I thought
season.
you was about to give me a timeline.
Well,
I was ready.
I wouldn't, I don't know what when it would be, but it's probably going to take some time for them to see this team's full potential. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people probably thought they were just going to come out of the gate and kind of click and kind of be where they uh, kind of maybe left off as far as their high point to last year. But so far, it's still kind of a work in progress, and there's still a lot of things they gotta work out.
Most definitely. And I feel like what ends up happening with teams in general, you overreact early, right? And I don't think this group is going to overreact. Asia kind of said it actually after the game as well, that she didn't anticipate her group overreacting, right? And I ultimately agree with her. And you kind of the exact quote that Callie Finn used in her story, shout to Callie, I actually used in mine as well, right? And that's the funny thing about reporter ears, by journalist ears. You hear certain things and you're like, oh, okay, that's absolutely going in, right? And this particular post game was no different. Becky, I couldn't listen to it live. I was trying to get the story done, but visibly irritated Becky Hammond, right? And I believe that's what she said kind of a couple of times last year as well, that I asked her about adjustments. And she was like, well, I can't really make those adjustments until we do what we initially set out to do. And then I'll know how to adjust. Like, we don't know if the original plan is going to work to begin with. She said that last year. So, and actually going back off of that quote that you just said, Callie used, that I also used, I believe it came off of a Callie question. And that was kind of what Callie was asking her, right? About how this group could ultimately fix what they're doing. But as Callie did kind of lend credence to in terms of this group, you're implementing a lot of new things on the defensive end, right? Not to mention exactly what you just mentioned maybe 60 seconds ago. You have new pieces in terms of this group. And then you're not healthy fully. And then, I mean, there's a series of things that you can add to this particular, I guess you could say, rough start, right? In terms of what Vegas has produced so far. I also think it's interesting to note that 3 of their first 4 games have been on the road. Of those 3 games, they've lost 2 of them. And I mean, again, it's not a cop out of no means, but I do think that first stretch where they get a couple of home games in a row and are able to kind of get some momentum injected into them, I do think they'll be able to carry that out on the road.
Yeah, they've had to make some long road trips out to LA, not to LA, but to New York, and then coming here to
Play in Connecticut.
Play Connecticut. That's never easy to do. And then they'll have some home games coming up with with LA, and they have a long several days off before their next game against the Sparks on Friday, and they kind of stay on the West Coast and have a nice home stretch, or where they don't have to travel too far in the first half of June, really. So we'll see if that kind of gets them going. Just kind of looking specifically at these two losses, right? Like,
Hmm.
you know, last yesterday, the Storm, they're shot the ball well, 60%.
Extremely well.
Got great guard play from NECA. Skylar Diggins uh, played well. Erica Wheeler off the bench, 21 points. They had 5 players in double figures and shot 50% from the floor. And then you kind of go back to that Liberty game, right? Kind of a little bit, kind of similar where their guard play was pretty good, right? You had Natasha Cloud had a big game and they had a pretty good, relatively shooting game, 50% from that play. So looking at the aces, it's going to be, I think the biggest question is going to be their obviously their guard play. How do their 3 all-star Olympian guards play well against these other top teams that have strong guard play? And then how does the aces depth handle that? Because we've seen
Yeah.
it now. Some players that aren't the starters or aren't the stars or more role players have kind of have gotten the better of the aces and have had big games. So we'll see how everyone else kind of meshes together if everyone's stays healthy and how they all kind of respond to that.
And we're actually going to get to Jewel Lloyd in 1 second too, right? Before I get to Jewel, I actually wanted to address one thing that I noticed while watching this team. I don't know if I've ever identified it this early on, but this team has no shot if it turns the ball over the way it did Sunday night or Sunday, right?
Yeah.
As I was watching this game, this team still has enough firepower. You kind of just talked about it. This team still has enough firepower to overcome a lot of mistakes. Now, it's Becky's job, and obviously her temperament kind of proves it. It's her job to limit those mistakes, right? I feel like if this team turns the ball over more than, I believe in this one, they turned the ball over 12 times, felt like a lot more. 21 points was scored off of those 12 turnovers. I feel like if this team turns the ball over 11 or more times, even 10 or more times, if it touches double digits, I'm not sure that this team has a shot. And that's because, going back to what you said, going back to Callie's question on Sunday, you're implementing these new things on defense. You have these new pieces that are also trying to figure it out on offense. In previous years, you can implement different things on the defensive end. The core all the way around was pretty much the same. There's a lot of things that shifted this offseason. You talked about assistant coaching, which I also think is not talked about enough, especially at this present moment in terms of the Aces, right? So just from that standpoint, I think the Aces don't need to hit the panic button, but I do think, obviously, we just had a conversation about Spade before the show started. I think at the very least, their ears should be perked up, and maybe you should just be alert. Just be a little more alert than maybe everybody was kind of coming into the season. Willie Ramirez talked about it on a couple of occasions. Becky talked about there being no real easy games this particular year. She looked at every roster and she was like, it's not really going to be one. If you believe her not to be blowing smoke, which I don't believe she was blowing smoke, this 2-2 start is very, very indicative of that. Going back to the Jewel Lloyd point, started the game on fire, 12 points in the first quarter, first 9 points for the Aces. I thought I was tripping. At the end of that first quarter, she was 4 of 5. She was 0 of 10 the rest of the way.
Yeah. She was 0 of 10 and then you look at some of the other aces. Jackie Young was 0 of 4 from 3, and Chelsea Gray only had 8 points, 2 of 5 shooting, 3 assists, two turnovers. I think, correct me if I was wrong, but they had 0 fast break points in the first half.
They might have been through the first 3 quarters.
Yeah. So you mentioned it with the struggles on defense. How does that impact everyone kind of going on offense? How does that kind of does that force you to try to force something that's not there, right? Does that is there still that early on that we're still kind of feeling each other out? How should we play with each other? How do we distribute the ball?
Hmm.
Obviously, you want to give Asia Wilson a bunch of touches. It's important that she's probably touching the ball on every offensive possession. But how do we how do we get our shots? How do we find our rhythm? How do we try to take advantage of whatever's at hand? And that kind of goes to our other point, right? Like Liz Kitley off the bench had some good minutes, 11 points, 5 rebounds, and Leah Nye made 2 3-pointers. Not really a whole lot more from the Aces bench. You look at Kia Stokes, who had 0 points, but had
I believe
4.
only in 17 plus minutes, right? I could be
Yeah,
wrong, but
no,
I
she
think it's
played
been
about
17.
17 minutes,
Okay.
0 points, 4 rebounds. So
I think one field goal attempt, right?
yeah,
And here's the thing: I had this conversation with Kia last year, and Kia said that she was a numbers person, so she was kind of interested to hear some of the numbers that I had for her. And I don't know why I even do these things, but I was just like, let me just see what happens. Becky always talks about, and this was during last year's run. She was like, I hate. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially Becky was like, I hate when teams don't guard Kia. Because when they don't guard Kia, like it's on Kia to go down there and demand the ball, and that's not really her game.
yeah,
So I was like, huh. She said it all last year, right? Anybody that covered the team, that watched the team, kind of knew that. I said, huh. And I started doing a little some number crunching. I said, well, let me see. Well, what is this team's record when Kia shoots 3 or less times? Or what about when she shoots 5 or more times? The team's record significantly skyrockets when she shoots the ball. And I told her, I said, just based on these numbers, I'm not talking about the field goals you've made. I'm talking about just when you take 4. And she was like, that's interesting because I am a person that, like, you got to show me the numbers. You got to show me the proof. She was like, maybe I mean, in hindsight, it's 2 or 3 more shots. She was like, and that's what I get. But I have Chelsea Gray right here. I have Asia Wilson right here. At the time, I have Kelsey Plum right here. I have Jackie Young. And Becky even said it. Becky was like, sometimes she's in practice and she's like, why am I shooting? Like, I don't really have to. We hear Draymond Green say it all the time. I mean, I know I'm an NBA player, but I have Steph and Clay. So I should probably pass the ball to either Steph or Clay. Just in hindsight, too, because I did mention the turnovers, right? There may be some basketball purists out there that's listening to the show and they're like, hey, well, when does that ever happen? When can a team turn the ball over 12 times and be successful? Let's go back to 2022. I covered that team. I'm not going to lie. With all due respect to the rest of the league, I almost felt like it didn't matter. The team could turn the ball over 15 times. Becky would be fuming on the sideline. This 12-0 run in the fourth quarter just negated all of it. This team, and another thing too, because when I did highlight this early in the offseason, everybody was like, well, Jewel is a pure scorer. Jewel is this. I think I've already bothered Jewel a whole lot since she's been here. And that's just me being completely honest. I love Jewel's game. Like, I hope she can kind of tell by the way that I'm talking to her. At no point this season through 4 games has Jewel Lloyd taken over. Jewel Lloyd does not know when to take over on this team yet. When that happens, and in addition, this isn't necessarily a shot at anybody, but Asia is leading this team in assists. Me and my dad got into the argument a long time ago about the way I felt about DeMarcus Cousins. I said, well, at the time in the league, how many 5s and or bigs in general are being played through? My dad was like, well, not even sure if Anthony Davis was in the league at the time. Maybe if he was, you could add him to the list. I said, it's Tim Duncan and it's DeMarcus Cousins. So I love what the Aces are doing in terms of playing through Asia at every point of the game. But the way that this team has flowed previously in championship seasons, the ball is working on that perimeter. When Asia gets the ball, Asia can attack. Asia has added that extra element to her game in terms of her passing the basketball. I've even asked her about it. I've even asked her teammates about it. That's great. I don't know that you want Chelsea Gray with 1 assist at halftime.
No, and in a way, when Asia needs to pass the ball and be a facilitator, in a way, it kind of like takes her out of the play because you're working the ball around the perimeter, and then she's working inside on the matchup or whatever it is, and kind of moving around with the ball. Um, and right, yeah, I mean, you mentioned with the turnovers right now, the way this team's shooting is struggling on defense, they kind of can't afford to have all those mistakes because they turn the ball over, the other team can go on a 12-0 run, then they can't dig out of it. Or how's the scoring, how's the offense going to look, right? And I remember some of those games in 2022 and even 2023 where it's close and then boom, big run in the fourth quarter. It's over. It's you know Chelsea Gray takes over. Jackie Young, at that point, like in 2022, Jackie Young was coming into her own. Kelsey Plum had come into her own, and they were taking over and hitting big shots. And this Aces team hasn't, they haven't, they had a close, win on Friday where Asia made some passes late and Drew Lloyd hit that big shot. But when on this team are those three guards or someone off the bench going to come down and hit 2, 3, 4 consecutive big shots, going to be in the play where they have the run that pulls them away or gets them close or takes the lead. We haven't seen that yet.
And you want to know what I think the worst part of it all at the present moment is? This group is unsure. It appears unsure of themselves on the defensive end, right? You talked about it. I actually highlighted it pretty high up in my story. This team has a couple days to try to gather try to actually gather its composure and gather some sort of momentum through practices, through film, through all these different things ahead of Friday. Because I predicted it again in the offseason, right? I said while Jewel is gonna have some time or you're gonna need some time kind of getting used to her new teammates and things of that nature, I said Kelsey Plum is gonna go to LA and start cooking right away. I think I actually made the joke that she might go for 40 in the opener. She went for 37. Now, I've seen this happen a lot in recent years where we just saw with Jewel, right? Where teams welcome back a former player and you are sitting back like, okay, this might be the one where they go off. And then you watch them play it a certain way all day long and you go, well, you did spend X amount of years here, so they know you the best. Part of me feels like Kelsey is walking in with a 30-piece in her back pocket. I don't know whether the Sparks get a dub or not, but I feel like Kelsey is coming here. I'm taking 22 of these shots. Everybody move.
Yeah. I mean, especially looking at the Sparks and it kind of focusing a lot of things around Kelsey and just kind of her mentality, coming with a new team and just how she is as a player and as a person, just how competitive she is. She's going to want to come in and have a good game. And I bet she's watching film from that Seattle game and the other Aces games. Like, all right, let's see how we can, get mismatches. Can we expose Chelsea or Jackie or get Jewel or attack the younger players and just try to get my own and have a good game. And you're right. This has, Kelsey Plum just hitting big shots, hitting a lot of shots and written all over it.
Don't let her get the win. If the Sparks get the win, here's the thing too. And again, I think everybody is going to be pretty welcoming of Kelsey, right? A lot of open arms. Because of that, I feel like her time is going to be limited while she's out here. At some point, I just want to reiterate to her the amount of people that have kept up her name since she's been gone. It's not a slight to Jewel. It's how beloved Kelsey was here in Vegas and still is here in Vegas, right? It kind of gives me a Marc-Andre Fleury vibe. It gives me a, hey, we don't really care what jersey you're wearing now. I walk around outside and I see a lot of 10 jerseys. And I think on Friday, you're going to see a lot of 10 jerseys. I think when she scores a lot of her baskets, you might still hear a lot of cheers. I think Kelsey's a little bit different in this group. And I would not It doesn't even matter. I'm not even gonna go that far down the line, but Kelsey's beloved here, and she's gonna feel it on Friday night.
Especially, yeah, I think so too. And you're just kind of speaking about the way Kelsey is. That kind of we saw it a lot. That fiery kind of vocal leader that she is, and how she plays with. Maybe that's something too that the Aces are kind of maybe looking for a little bit. That fiery vocal person. I mean, we see Chelsea and Asia, and to an extent, but a lot of it was looking at Kelsey and just kind of the way she played, the example she set, and just being that vocal leader was something that the team kind of fed off a lot.
Remember what I just said about her at the Sparks? Hey, I'm gonna take 22 of these shots.
Yeah.
Everybody move.
Yeah,
She did that with the Aces.
Yeah.
Move.
Mm.
Everybody move. And not to sound like that, there's gonna come a point where Jewel looks at the group and goes, move. I'll figure it out. There were times, and the funny thing is, you're absolutely right. That is kind of what has been missing from this group so far this year, right? We actually Chelsea and I talked about it a little bit post game against Washington. They were showing a double every time Asia put the ball on the floor inside the arc. Cool. So they're going to show a double at the very, very least. So she has to be the playmaker, right? Because I said that Jewel hasn't found that comfort spot yet where she can be like, cool, I'm taking over here. I've seen several points through the first 4 games where I was like, and this is where for 4 straight possessions, Kelsey would come down and shoot the ball. We need a spark. I'm driving a lane 3 of these times. I'm popping this step back 3. 3 of them then went in. 7-0 run by myself. So I do think, like I said before, that is where the Aces are headed. But in the early season, you can kind of see what's missing from this group. This is exactly why I drew up the show for an hour and a half, because I knew that we were going to go over on a couple of topics. So I figured it would be the first hour, the basketball hour, but we are 30 minutes into our Monday episode of the Talk That Talk radio show. I'm Terrell. That's Alex. We're getting ready to talk conference finals. Let's talk the Pacers, man. I think sports are great in totality, right? The Reggie choke picture, the Tyrese choke picture, for the Pacers to have a chance to go up 3-0 in the conference finals and essentially write that name on that contract in pencil at the very least, for you guys to cough up a lead like that, I sat back and said, yeah, that's the basketball guys laughing at you. It's designed to happen that way. I think more leads are going to be blown in this series. I don't know by which side, but I do think if the Pacers lose this series, this game 3 is going to hurt a lot worse than the team is letting on right now.
Right. And we saw it at it just felt like everything was going right for the Pacers, and it was just going to be, obviously we see it in these series. Once you go up 3-0, it's practically over, especially after how the Pacers won those 2 games and in New York to start the series. So I expected this series to go 7 games with how these teams are and just the way that they play and kind of contradictory styles, and just expect it to be a more physical series where it's going to come down to the end and all that. And I going back at the game. I was watching the NASCAR race. Then I had my iPad on the Pacers Knicks, and I just kind of kept looking. I was like, all right, man, Indiana, it's gonna be an easy win. And then even as when it got late, I'm like, okay, Indiana, they're gonna find a way to pull this out. Like I thought they were gonna pull this out.
So much frustration.
No, your frustration, but I mean, credit to the Knicks. I mean, we saw the other game 3 in the West, and it could have easily been a 40-point type of game, but
it's a great point.
They never gave up, and they were still in it, and they found a way to win and swing this series back to where game 4 is going to be, obviously a big game, but it's you can't say one way or another that a team necessarily has an edge per se.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely with you. The fact that the Knicks hadn't won a conference final game in that building in their team's history before yesterday or 2 nights ago. That also is something that could breed bad energy for this series, right? They were 0-9 in that building before yesterday. So for Indiana, just me watching the game, right? I originally had the Knicks in 7, right? Obviously my childhood fandom, everybody knows where my heart is. Not a single soul that knows me doesn't think that my heart is not with Indiana. And I remember walking around after game when I was at the bar. I'm walking around the bar and I'm looking up at the screens and it said, "Is game 2 a must win for the Knicks?" I said, "How dare you?" I said, "You guys are so disrespectful. Since when has it ever been okay to go down 2-0 in the conference finals? And you were the home team. When was that ever okay?" So after Indy went up 2-0, in the back of my mind, it was disrespectful to Indy. I was like, game 3 to me feels like a must win. You got to put your foot on their neck now. And it didn't, right? So Indiana didn't do it. So now I'm looking at how this team reacts down the stretch. I know social media loves to make fun of Karl Anthony Towns, right? I've had to come on this platform plenty of times, going back to my Cerritos days. I was wrong. I grew up a Duke fan. That particular year, maybe it was my Duke fandom poking a little bit, but I was looking at Jahlil Okafor and I was like, I'm looking at the post moves, I'm looking at the footwork. I'm not gonna lie, I like him more than Cat. He's not relying on the 3-ball. I was wrong. I realized shortly after that draft, okay, this take isn't gonna live well. It's not going to last very long in this ether. Hopefully it doesn't. It was a tale of two reactions for me. About 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and I called Washington blowing that game against Vegas because I was like, it was 2 of 3 possessions. They came down, and the ball went out of bounds off of their fingertips under the basket. 2 of 3 possessions. And I forgot who was next to me, and I was like, they're going to cough this game away. They're tight. You can see it. About 5 minutes left in that game, or excuse me, about 5 minutes left in the third quarter of that game, I looked at Indiana and I said, everybody's tight. I said, this is not going the way that they want. Fourth quarter started, I'm looking at Pascal Siakam, and I said, if you just had to do a blind test and say, hey, who's won a championship on that Indiana roster? Sure looks and feels like Pascal Siakam has been there before. I watched everybody else, Tyrese Halliburton included, and said, oh, they thought the game was won in the first half. Pascal was the only one still playing right now. Maybe Miles Turner is maybe the next closest. Everybody else tight. On the opposite side, I'm looking at Karl Anthony Towns get busy. And by the second 3 that he made during that run, I was like, oh, it's over. I said, he's going to have his moment. And then the fact that it came on the DR's Mother's Day, you guys know how I feel about storylines. I said, oh, this game was written for him. This was his. And then I went back and replayed them fourth quarter highlights. There was no way in hell we were beating the Knicks if Karl Anthony Towns plays like that.
Yeah, and everyone kind of looked at the Knicks, and everyone knows about Jalen Brunson. We know Jalen's going to, get buckets, and he's going to have a good game. Looking at him like, all right, Jalen Brunson plays well, it's going to be Knicks will win. But as we've seen in this, as we saw, on Sunday, it was going to be who else on the Knicks could step up for. And it was, Karl Anthony Towns. And it was funny. I saw that. I think it was this morning. I saw the tweet that yesterday was the Dominican Mother's Day. It's like, oh, okay. I kind of had that same reaction you did.
Because it makes sense.
It does.
And not to sound like that, Karl Anthony Towns is one of those people that since his mother's passing in 2020, I believe I have that year right, he's been very vocal about how he's felt since, how he plays since, and in moments that he remembers conversations that he would have with his mom after bad games, after good games, things like that. He's been very vocal about his journey since, right? That's why I tell people all the time, yes, everybody knows my childhood heart is where it is, right? Yes, everybody knows I text Will Despard, who's from New York, F the Knicks. He's not even a Knicks fan. I just said it because I told him I had to tell a New Yorker. I just gotta say it. It's just a part of it, comes with the territory, right? This is why I believe that I'm in the field that I'm in, because we all have favorite teams, right? We all should know how to differentiate that, right? I don't care if you are the most loyal of Pacer fans. There's no way to watch what you saw yesterday and then find out, if you did not know, that it was the Dominican Republic's Mother's Day and no cat story. Dog, I'm on my couch, eyes welling up. I'm like, bruh, it makes sense. Like, how many points did he score? 20 in the fourth. Yeah, it makes sense. Going back to that too, if Indiana loses game 4, as I said before, this game 3 in Indy history, it will be one of those.
Yeah.
On the other side, I know people thought I was crazy, but I said I felt like OKC, or Minnesota rather, could win game 3, probably in a big fashion, because we've seen that OKC can be blown out, right? I said, what if they lose game 4 in a buzzer beater like type fashion, right? Everybody would feel like, oh, that energy going back to OKC, the series is over. I just would like to know what people's percentage would be on that, right? In my mind, the percentage is around 70%. Cool. Maybe a 70%. Maybe that's a for sure thing. Maybe the series is over in 5. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm talking about energies, right? We just talked about what happens if the Knicks win game 4. I'm talking about the scenario of if Minnesota goes back to OKC down 3-1. They still have a chance to win game 4. Now, whatever percentage I had in terms of their chances to win game 4, I know people may move the opposite way. They've only heightened for me after what I saw in game 3. It's exactly the reason why I said before, I did have OKC winning this series. I had them winning in 6, but I said Anthony Edwards, again, going back to the Luka point that we had a couple of years ago, or was it last year when they were in the finals? Damn, that seems insane. In hindsight, I'd be a little pissed if I was Luka too. Now that I just thought about it,
Yeah.
wait a minute. We were just in the fight anyway. But going back to what I said about Luka, right? If he is who we think he is, he should probably go in there and do something that he shouldn't do. I've said this a million times. I grew up a Kevin Garnett stan. My mom hated KG. Hated him. I was the exact opposite. You couldn't say a negative word about Kevin Garnett around me. I would literally lose it. I'm a Pacer fan. I looked at somebody's game like a Paul Pierce and was like, yeah, I like the way he plays. He's slow. He's methodical. He gets to his spot. Not super athletic. Not finna necessarily dunk on you, young Paul Wood. But I'm like, this is what I'm watching. At no point when watching them in those early years that I look at a Paul Pierce, that I look at a Kevin Garnett in the same Minnesota and went, yeah, they're going to win a ring. They never made me feel that. There is no way in hell that I should look at this Minnesota team and say, they got a shot. There is one guy that makes me feel that way.
Yeah. Just looking at, how, Minnesota, game 2 was pretty close. It was within their reach. They had a shot, until late with Minnesota, but it feels like kind of like how you talked about how Indiana got a little bit tight. I feel like with Ant and how he is, kind of the other guys on this team kind of maybe don't necessarily have to maybe worry about that. They've been in some playoff series before. Obviously, here coming in this year in the conference finals, the heavy kind of underdog against Oklahoma City, and just kind of feel like with how Anthony Edwards is as a leader and just the style that he plays, is that you just kind of can't count them out. You can kind of like they're gonna he's gonna score 40 points, or they're going to lose, but he's going to shoot 30 times.
Absolutely.
He's going to put his team on his back, and they always are going to have a fighting chance. And it's kind of part where they have a little bit of experience, but they're still young, so they still kind of maybe necessarily don't know any better. And then you've got Oklahoma City, who it's like this is their first time really in this situation. So that's kind of an equalizer too. So it's why that you still can't count them out. And if they get that, they even the series going back to Oklahoma City, you just count that. You still can't count out Minnesota.
Here's the only thing that I have in the back of my mind, and this is not whatever, call it what you want, right? I think what you just said is a brilliant point, and I'm late on the round of applause, but here you go, sir. I'm gonna tell you why. When Dave McMenamin did our show last year, right, heading into the conference final, shout out to Dave, shout to Hoop. Daryl Harris asked him, he was like, hey, who do you like in the conference finals, right? And I believe Dave in the moment, he was like, you can call me a prisoner of the moment, but I like Minnesota. Like, here's the reason why, whatever. Daryl was like, and Dave was like, well, actually, I think it's kind of up in the air. So who do you like? I think Daryl smoked his opportunity, right? You get an opportunity. You got somebody from ESPN, a basketball head, asking you what you think. This is your moment. Go. Daryl was like, well, I'm going to be completely honest. I feel like you advance in stages. I sat back and I said, that is a pretty good point. He said, well, Minnesota's been to the conference finals before. Or Luka has been in these different scenarios before. He even highlighted when Luka was playing overseas in those big games. Luka was 15, 16, 17. Luka's been in these scenarios before. So, like he said, on the East side, we kind of look at Boston, and yeah, we kind of felt like Boston's probably going to take it all. But in terms of this particular one, and he gave his synopsis, right? So I bring that up to say, if you're just talking in terms of advancing in stages, Minnesota would have that nod. That's why I think what you said is a valid point, right? Here's another thing too, and this is where, and I've had conversations with KD, so I know just from, I don't know him, but from having conversations with him, I feel like he's gonna look at me and be like, why would you bring my name up? But this was the issue that I had with KD when he left Golden State, or when he left OKC, right? Yes, and this is why I can never be mad at him for it, because he's right. The right basketball play in Game 6 and in Game 7 is to pass that ball to Andre Roberson in the corner for that open three. My argument is there is a reason why Andre Roberson is open in that corner for a three. So at a certain point, we're going to talk about you if you guys win or lose. Shoot the shot. At one point, and everybody clipped it up, right? At one point, Rudy Gobert is wide open under the basket. Dante DiVincenzo is wide open in the corner in front of the team's bench. Anthony Edwards shoots a fading mid-range jumper over three people and cashes it. When this is said and done, win or lose, they're going to talk about me. You just said it. I'm shooting the ball 30 times. What did we say about Kelsey? We don't know if the Sparks are going to win on Friday. Everybody move. I'm going to shoot the ball 25 times at the very least. Anytime you have a player like that, I think all bets are off. Now, here's the question that I had, going back to what I originally started this with. How many NBA champions have we had that had multiple 20-point losses in the postseason? It's the only question I have. We saw Denver whoop OKC's ass. We've seen Memphis actually lead by 20 plus at halftime and blow that game. And now we've seen Minnesota whoop their ass. I don't know if we've seen an NBA champion at the very least in the last 20 years. Maybe in the early 2000s, it probably got a little funky, but in the last 20 years, I can't think of another champion that had several 20-point losses in the postseason. I can't think of one that had one. But I could be wrong. You got anything else on either one of these conference finals, I should say?
No.
if that's the case, we are 10 minutes. My mom is in the chat. She said that she still do, meaning she hates Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett isn't even. The funny thing is, here's why KG will never beat the allegations when it comes to my mom. She hated him because he was on the court. I was gonna say barking, and then like he literally was barking at people before. So she didn't like the fact that he was just on the court and he was everything that you would love. I told her if he was a Laker, you would love him. Like he talks on defense, he gets in the opposing team's head, he barks in the media when he needs to, he barks at people on the court when he needs to. You would love him if he was a Laker. And she was like, that's just it. He's not a Laker. You're right. And you had to see him when, 04, he won the MVP. You probably felt like, yeah, okay, all right, valid point. And then he goes to be a Celtic. I said, dog, all bets are off. I said, you've lost her forever, dog. Like you will never come back. And then you followed that up with KG doing exactly what I was hoping he would do, winning the media. I remember when he went back to Minnesota, they was like, hey, the second time, and they were like, hey, Kobe said that he would never coach. I mean, what do you feel about it? I remember his look. Me? Coach? Hell no. I believed him wholeheartedly. I said, but that reaction alone, yeah, as soon as it's done, come have a seat next to me. Come do this thing called media. More opportunity for him to bark, more opportunity for him to be yelling at people. I said, my mom is going to hate him forever. It's never going to change. Shout out to KG, man. You got a fan in me forever. But let's talk a little football. I know it's a little different. We don't typically do that during the spring and summer months, but it's heating up in the IFL and not in the way that Vegas wants it to. Second straight loss with huge standing implications on the line. A lot of people say, and honestly, I think the team would say, like, you're overreacting, saying huge. Cool. You had an opportunity to be first in the conference last week. And right now you're in the fourth slot. I would say those were two huge games. That's just me. I don't think it's over for this group. But I actually had the conversation with Mike Davis after the game on Sunday Night Football, right? And I had the conversation with him. And I said, I feel like we've had this conversation back-to-back years. I said, but back-to-back losses, back-to-back last-second losses. Now, I'm almost positive because you were at home relaxing, you did not watch this game.
I did not.
This would have took away all your relaxation.
Hey.
It would have filled you with anxiety.
Oof.
What if I told you on the final drive for, I almost forgot who the hell they played. What if I told you on the final drive for San Diego, they converted 4 fourth downs, 3 fourth downs, one of which was a 4th and 9. I'm looking at and again, this is in San Diego at Front Wave Arena. I'm looking at the screen, and in the back of my mind, I know I've said this twice today. This is probably why I'm sitting in this seat. In the back of my mind, I'm like, how are you guys not throwing up? Like, here, let me tell you why. Matter of fact, where's my notes? Is my bag over there?
Yeah, it's over here.
Can I have that, please?
Yeah.
There is no way I'm really about to do this, but I'm going to do this. When I tell you that something just didn't feel right, thank you, about this game, where are my notes? Here we go. So I talked with Mike Davis about not letting it demoralize you, right? Back-to-back last-second losses. We talked about it last week about potentially going from 5-2 to 4-3, how that looked, right? So now you had an opportunity where you could have been 6-2, and now you're 4-4. So let's just add to that, right? Here's the deal. In that fourth quarter, Vegas takes his first lead of the second half with about 7 minutes to go, right? On that, they're up by 4. I'll tell you why they're up by 4 in a second. Okay. San Diego comes out, and on their first 4th down, it's a 4th and 4. They get the first down run. Oh, here's the reason why they get the first down run. If you know anything about San Diego, the Strike Force, Their starting quarterback, Nate Davis, at one point in time was a practice squad player for the San Francisco 49ers, has a cannon, can throw the hell out of the football. You know, when you play Nate Davis 9 times out of 10, they're going to throw the football 80% of the time. Nate on a scramble gets hurt, middle of the second quarter-ish, and they bring in Rudy Johnson, who was actually the team's running back, right? Comes in, so now you're preparing for a completely different quarterback. I just want you to be mindful of that, right? So on that 4th and 4, the quarterback rushes for a first down. He fumbles the ball. Vegas doesn't recover. San Diego fumbled the ball earlier in the game, in the second quarter. Vegas didn't get that one either. Just wanted to highlight that. 4th and 9 is the next 4th down. 4th and 9. And Mike actually said it, and I heard them say it on the broadcast as well. They had to literally show Mike how much the football crossed by. Mike said 4th and 9, we give up 9 1/4. I just looked at him. Okay. Vegas challenges that in a hope that, hey, they're short. We get the ball back. We're up 4. Probably hovering around 2 minutes left around this time. Maybe a little bit more, 2.5. We can do something with it. It's an unsuccessful challenge. Now, if you wasn't throwing up, your stomach should be bubbling. This is 2 4th downs. They're past midfield. Something don't feel right. Now the clock is getting down to a minute. I need to stop the clock. I'm serious. This is indoor football. Like, I need time now. I gotta make it. Yeah, we gotta do something. We gotta do something. Not something like that. This is why certain players get that signal from the sideline, and you cramp. That's why it happens, right? The next 4th down, 4th and 4. I'm not gonna lie to you, play looked really weird. Looks like a drag route gets stopped right behind the line of scrimmage. I said, okay, Vegas has it stopped finally. Flags all over the field. Okay. In the IFL, it's called illegal defense. In our football purist hearts, it's simply offsides. Didn't I just tell you it was 4th and 4? Mm-hmm. It's a 5-yard penalty. Mm-hmm. Smells like a new set of downs. This team was flagged 8 times in the first half. In the second half, it was relatively clear. I think they had 2 in the second half. That one kept the drive going. Then finally, Rudy Johnson, I believe it was on the first down at this point, gets about a 3 or 4 yard rush, gets to the end zone. I'm not going to lie. This one I thought should have went Vegas' way. It appeared that he was short. Vegas uses its second challenge on the same drive. That one goes unsuccessful as well. As I'm talking to Mike Davis after the game and I'm trying to figure out how I'm trying to get this quote for my story, I'm sitting here and I'm like, what's the question I want to ask? Well, let's just boil it down. That last offensive drive for San Diego had 2 failed challenges, a flag that cost you guys possibly the game, and what else did I mean? Oh, and a failure to fall on a loose ball. Things that have plagued this team in every single loss this season. And this one, and I've said it before, sometimes I feel more inspired by Mike after a loss. I don't know how it happens, but he was like, there's not a single soul in that locker room that doesn't feel like we shouldn't have won the game. Okay. I know mad football teams that think that. And then when you go back and watch, you shouldn't have won the game. Here's why Mike might be onto something. Vegas scores early in that 4th quarter, right? Vegas originally was down by 9 points, 35-26. Vegas scores. That extra point is blocked. So at the time, Vegas is down 35-32. Here's why that's important. Vegas had missed 2 extra points prior to that. And now you just had an extra point blocked. Game should be tied at 35. So, remember how I told you that San Diego went ahead and scored on that final drive? They gave Vegas the ball back with 3 seconds left. It's indoor football. Anything can happen. Still. In NFL, no shot. Right? Most times, no shot. 3 seconds left. Vegas is down at this time, 39-42. Those same 3 points, right? Kicking team trots out there. Same situation that has bothered this team the last 3 seasons, right? Missed field goal. I've covered this team. Shout out to Markel Collins. Markel Collins has covered this team, right? I don't know if he knew. But in that moment, I'm watching that game. They gave a stat update and said that Vegas has attempted 4 field goals this year. You want to guess how many it's made?
0.
Not a single one. Mike might be right. I understand that there are guys in their locker room that feel like that game should have gone a different way. But all the things that continue to bother this team, I think there was a game this season where this team had 11 penalties. We've covered the Raiders. There is no way in hell most football games you're winning when you're penalized over the length of the football field. You've got 11 penalties racking up to 105 yards. You just gave them a score at the very least. Indoor football is a little different, right? You have a smaller field. These penalties rack up, and obviously had a legal defense for that first down, kept the drive going, and it was on a play, like Mike said, we stopped them. So, as he said, you got to shake it off. You got to move on. The problem is you're moving on against the first place team that you just lost to 2 weeks ago. So now you're welcoming in Arizona, who handed you a last-second loss last week, and I think I have that time as well. Do I have it? Arizona scored the other week with 9.6 seconds left. So you've allowed the go-ahead score with less than 10 seconds and less than 5 seconds in the last 2 weeks. If this team loses a third straight game and falls under 500, I have to get a feel for what the locker room feels like. I pretty much know what Mike is going to tell me if that were to happen. We've been around football players, and we know that it's a little different in football world. These 18, we don't get 82 of these. We don't get 44 of these. We don't get 32 of these in college basketball. We get 17, 18 of these. Losing 3 straight can derail a season. This team is currently tied for third in the West, so it's nothing, like as Mike said, it's nothing to freak out about, right? I asked him the question about how much moving forward is going to be about forgetting the standings, forgetting the record. Win every week. That's what the team should be worried about. And he kind of openly admitted it. He said, "Hey, it's the middle of the season. We're what? Tied for third? Like you said, it's a lot of football left. Like, we're not really worried about the standings anyway, but we're in the thick of it." I think it'd be best if this team keeps their eyes away from the standings. I think considering you had 2 golden opportunities to be sitting on top of them, I know teams, and again, how many athletes have we been around where they'll be like, yeah, we're not even paying attention to the other team. We're focused on ourselves. The moment them cameras cut off, yeah, no, I seen that game last night. That transition defense was bad. I don't really know why they're not going to say that on camera. Oh, yeah. How many times do we see it sometimes? And I don't know if you want to even be that open, but I've seen it on the bench sometimes, in the dugout sometimes. Guys would be sitting there and guys would be like, what's the score? They scored? Who scored? All right, yeah. One more inning. We know we're worried about what we're worried about, but if they lose, we're in. We've seen teams watch the standings. I know that this team has felt like it's had a target on its back for the last 2 years. Not saying it hasn't. Right now, I think that added pressure that most teams give to themselves, Vegas doesn't need. Just to give you guys a standings update the rest of the way. Arizona 7-1, Bay Area is 6-2, San Diego and Vegas are both 4-4. I do think it's important to highlight. I wasn't sure if San Diego was going to be a postseason team this year. They were last year. Let's say that they're not. They've played Vegas 3 times this season. They've taken 2 of those meetings. That said, if San Diego isn't a playoff team, does that mean the jury's still out on Vegas being one? Second meeting in 3 weeks with Arizona is looming on Saturday, 6 p.m. from Lee's Family Forum. I think that'll be the first game that I'm able to attend in person this season. I'm hoping so. I need to definitely get out there and feel what the energy is in person. I believe the rest of the way, Alex, I have 35 minutes written down. It's all surrounding baseball. So I know I have the right person in the building for that. So I have 3 different ways that we could go about this now.
Okay.
Typically, it's the Aviators. Typically, it's the Athletics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember how I said the running joke in the press box at Las Vegas Ballpark? Shout out to my guys at Las Vegas Ballpark. Has been for the last 2 years that the Athletics, lead the league in transactions.
Yep.
Remember how I had the conversation with? It's a whole lot of callbacks. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Remember how I had the conversation with Fran Reardon after the first series, and I was like, "Are you sensing that you'll be able to keep your guys for a good chunk of the year?" He said, "You know what? The feeling is that the entire organization has gotten some stability." So with that being said, of course, we want our guys to go up and perform at the next level. I do get the feel that we'll have a bulk of these guys for a good chunk of the year. I said, ooh, it's manager talk. I like the way you did that, right? Cool, whatever. Fast forward. The A's are kind of in the thick of it in terms of the AOS. The Aviators are rushing past everybody in the PCL. Fast forward all the way to May 23rd. Alex, everything shifted. When I tell you that every single thing that I thought I knew about the season nearly went out the window. The third way that we could attack this is all of the call-ups, because that's a separate section in itself. The A's brought back up Jacob Lopez, right? Pitcher actually hurled 8 strikeouts, in his most recent outing for the Athletics. But they called up Jacob Lopez, CJ Alexander, Denzel Clark, Willie MacGyver, who was actually hitting 400 at the minor league level maybe 2 weeks ago. And then Logan Davison, who's a utility man. And by the way, Logan Davison is a 6'4" utility man. So the A's have bulls in his farm system. So it doesn't shock me that they're calling these guys up. It did shock me that I got the notification that the A's called up 7 guys at once.
Yeah.
So what is that? 6 guys? Actually, add Anthony Maldonado to that as well, who was called up, I believe, the day before. Alex, I looked at that and said, so that's a guy that's batting 385 out of the lineup. That's a guy that's actually leading the team in home runs in terms of CJ. Logan Davison is a guy that any given day can play anywhere, right? Except for an injury, he can go play in the outfield, right? Where else am I at? Denzel Clark. I had the conversation with Matt Neverett, who's actually joined us on this show before via phone. I said, hey, I'm in the booth one day, and I was like, can you give me a comp for Denzel Clark? And he gave me a name. I don't even want to say the name publicly, but we couldn't pinpoint a name. I said, well, Denzel is tall as all hell. He's fast. He's a better hitter than people give him credit for. He can field the hell out of the ball. I said, I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. I said, I mean, maybe if he hits for a little more power. I said, but I can't really figure out a comparison. Denzel Clark gets to the big leagues, and what's the first thing he does? That highlight reel dive and catch out in center. And I pay attention to everybody. Shout out to Sika Edwards, right? I'm gonna give him a round of applause really quick. We were at Westchester. We were winning city title after city title. That story about Dodger Stadium, Sika was the manager. So Coach Seek, I used to always talk to him about just his process and how he does cutting and things like that, right? Every time baseball tryouts would roll around, he would go out there and he would be like, all right, guys, line up, play catch. The whole time he's talking to me. Dog, don't you got a job to do? You must be looking at these kids play catch. He looked at me and was like, he said, as a baseball player, playing catch should be second nature. He said, I've cut half of these guys already. I said, what do you mean? He was like, look at how many of these guys are nervous. Could be the tryout itself. He was like, but the guys that's out there just talking still, he said, those are the guys that I want. I don't know if anybody else paid attention to what I did. Denzel Clark made that catch out in center field, chomping like a mug on that gum, made the throw back into the infield from his knees. The way he made the throw, I was like, was somebody on base? No. He's on his knee, lofted it back to the infield. I almost text Matt and was like, I don't know if we get him back. I'm just going to be honest with you. Just in terms of this new guard as well, all of these different moves, you got to make room with somebody, right? Seth Brown was designated for assignment. You guys know how I feel about Brownie. Somebody who was a part of that 2019 team, I believe actually the last piece of that 2019 PCL winning team with this Las Vegas Aviator team. He was designated for assignment as a result. Let's add to the fact Willie MacGyver, we talked about him hitting 400 with the Aviators this season. He goes up to the bigs, and his first hit drives in a run in the 8th inning as part of a 2-run rally. And then he throws out a runner at second for the final, or he did it at, I believe it was at second, but he did it for the final out of the game. So again, Aviators going up to the next level, making instant impacts for a team that had just lost 11 games in a row. Respectfully, do you want to know my only question after this? Where does that leave the Aviators? I mentioned it last week. Actually, I mentioned it a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, because now it's 2 different times that it's happened. They called up Nick Kurtz, right? I said, well, all the conversation was surrounded around Nick Kurtz, so I'm waiting to see who steps up in this lineup. Kobe Thomas had his moments. But I said, if this team struggles the next 2 or 3 games, it wouldn't shock me, right? Whether you feel like the team struggled or not, post Nick Kurtz, it eventually goes on a run, right? Fran Reardon missed 3 games, I believe it was, last homestand. Bench coach had a family emergency over at the big league level. Fran goes up. I believe 2 of those 3 games that Fran was gone, the Aviators lost. And now you get this platoon swap. There is no way in hell the Aviators should still be leading the PCL, right?
Shouldn't be.
I've told Fran this to his face. 2019, you kind of just wait. All right, cool. Fran wins manager of the year. His second one that he got, I even told Fran. That's because of what you had to deal with. Like, you had to work with a lot. Like, you showed that you managed the hell out of this team. One of these particular stints that I just mentioned, out of the 3 that I just mentioned, Fran wasn't here.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like this man is about to bring in a third one. How long does he stay in the minor leagues after bringing in a potential 3rd PCL manager of the year? I don't think the A's losing 11 straight games helps. I don't think that Fran was just up there at the big league level for no reason. They've taken different guys before.
Mm-hmm.
They took Fran. Just to again, it's my job to report, right? Chronicle the story. April of last year, Don Logan said, hey, we're at the point to where we all know he deserves a chance. I'm at the point to where every offseason I expect that phone call to come. He said every offseason I have to have an exit plan. Because he's going to get that call one day. And when he does, we have to be ready for it. Like he said, I don't know if the A's do it. I don't know who does it, but it's coming. Hey, man.
Especially if the Aviators weather the storm of call-ups and they're still in it and they're playing playoff baseball. And if all the changes, he's the constant. And this team's always, really, they always have been in it. They've always been first, or they're in the hunt for have a shot to be in the second half or up in the first half. Something about him, it's good in the locker room, and everyone should be taking notice.
And I'm happy that you said everyone, right? Because by the way, a little vent session. It's not about the Angels. So Alex, stall me out. I seen the way you looked at me and I was like, chill out. It's not about the Angels. But it is a vent session. Because I've seen a story from the Las Vegas Review-Journal that I'm mad at the A's a little bit. Just a tiny bit. Because I've said it before, when I ask questions sometimes about the stadium or timeline or things of that nature or proposed cost changing, and I've always given the A's credit for this. They've always been pretty headstrong. We're moving to Vegas. Like, it's done. Like, you guys can stop thinking about exit plans. However, to see the Las Vegas Review-Journal do a story this weekend, a place that you are very, very familiar with, and it says, and I believe, and first of all, you guys teased the hell out of the story. Shout out to you guys for that. You guys teased the hell out of the story, but the intro to the story essentially said, well, what if the A Stadium doesn't get built? Well, there's a plan for that. I'm sitting at home like, this is why I'm asking the questions I'm asking. Because there wouldn't be a plan for anything else if you guys were headstrong on this is what we're doing. And again, I give all the A's all the credit in the world. They've never told me anything different. I'm not saying that they have. I also have told them I've never seen a relocation look like this. If you could point to one that looked as muddy as this one, I'll stop talking. I've seen expansion teams look smoother than this. And now we're talking about what backup plans would be. What I've heard in terms of backup plans was that the stadium is getting built. That resort is getting built. Is it going to be for the A's? I don't know. I told you guys 2 years ago, just in conversations with Major League Baseball, expansion is real. They're ready. Portland is one spot that I keep hearing about. I've talked about the Angels relocating a million times. They have a team in Salt Lake. They want a team in Utah. Vegas is getting a team. I've told you guys that. And again, in the A's defense, they keep telling me it's them. I have also been told that an expansion team moving to that beautiful ballpark could be a possibility. We shall see what happens. Do you have anything on the way that the relocation looks? Because again, another thing that I'll go back to, and I've mentioned it to, actually I've mentioned it at the ballpark. I haven't mentioned it to the A's specifically. I don't see green around the city. And that's another thing that I'm highlighting, right? There were Raider things in stores, in department, in Macy's, around the city. I don't even see green.
Yeah.
If I'm Sacramento, I'm like, I got a shot.
Yeah. If I'm right, Sacramento, Salt Lake City, until the A's trot out on that Las Vegas ballpark on the Strip and are playing a baseball game, I'm doing everything I can to get them. And I know a lot of the talk when they left Oakland was, we want a grand entry into Las Vegas, so we don't want to play at the ballpark. I'm sure there could have been some, I don't know, logistical things with
Yeah.
playing the Aviators and the A's there, just keeping up with the ballpark. But I'm sure they could have figured out a way. Um, I think that's kind of stalled some momentum on that as far as the fan reaction. I think people see the A's on the past be kind of cheap and see how, in some ways, on their end of the end of the relationship of the end of Oakland, that brought them down.
Yeah.
They see, just this game with just the ballpark's going to be on one side. There's this side. There's people frustrated with the LVCVA and giving
Mhm.
the A's a lot of money. I mean, I think I saw that they went down on the amount of proposed parking spots they were going to have. They were going to have like around 6,000. It's like, oh, actually, it's going to be 2,000 or something. And people are frustrated with that, with all the taxpayer dollars that went into it.
I still don't think nobody's thinking about parking or traffic. I
Yeah.
really don't. Like,
Yeah.
I think that is a poor location
Yeah.
to begin with. And again, I've seen the changes that they've made, and I know they probably wish I would stop saying their name, but I keep looking at the Rio like
Yeah.
that was the spot. That was the spot. You don't have to be on the strip, but you can still get all the amenities of essentially being on the strip.
Yeah.
Right? Again, NBA team, whether it's an expansion team or a relocated team, almost said a name. It makes you kind of look at it and go, well, the Rio is still a spot.
Mhm.
I love bowling at the Orleans. That's one of my favorite spots in the city to do. Cheap. What? That might be a spot. That is a prime location. Like, I'm thinking about every other spot that you could do it. And now you want to limit parking spots? People aren't going to walk into the building until third inning.
Yeah.
And I really don't think people have anticipated Memorial Day weekend, right?
Yeah.
It's already hell going up and down the strip.
It's hot.
Not to mention that. Not to mention it's hot as all hell outside. Let's just assume the Yankees are in town Monday through Wednesday. And then the Dodgers are in town Friday through Saturday. You know what that week is going to be like? And what happens if it happens in a random August? What happens if it happens on a, I don't know, Canelo fight weekend?
Raiders game.
Let Messi be out here. Let Post Malone occupy the damn Allegiant Stadium again. I don't think people are contemplating that. I've told people before, one of my worst nights at Dodger Stadium, the Dodgers played the Reds. Don't laugh. I'm so dead ass. I almost died in the parking lot looking for the car. I had the flu. It was bad, dog. Why are so many people here to watch Cincinnati? Why? Nobody should be here for that. And I don't think Vegas is going to realize it until Shohei's in town. They're going to see the Cubs and they're going to be like, oh, okay, cool. We can deal with this. No, you can't. This is very unfortunate, but that first year of them being out here, let's say it is the A's, whatever baseball team is out here, that first year, 90% of my stories is going to be how this city is reacting to the changes to the strip. I've had conversations, I'm sure you have too. I've had conversations with people about working on the strip, and they'll be like, yeah, on a random Tuesday, I got to leave an hour and a half early. Cool. Be ready to add another hour onto that. Is this the part where I'm supposed to talk about baseball?
Yeah.
I guess.
We'll keep talking about baseball, yeah.
Well, I mean, I can't say what I want to say. I'll say this, and this is not a knock to the A's by no means, because you got to protect what you protect, right? But you would think, just in terms of certain questions that I have, or certain questions that people have, or the city has, or whatever the case may be, I'm sure that the RJ has, right? I feel like it could be solved with, the city has asked for Fisher to come out and like speak like publicly. It's not gonna happen. Like, especially not right now. Like, it's not gonna happen. They want him to do it during negotiations, and I was like, oh, that's never gonna happen. But since then, I've had people say in the city, well, we just want him to come out and say something. It's not gonna happen. The way that you can do it is to talk to media, talk to somebody out here, right? And I know that they've done it before. It's been kind of sporadic, but you would think if I'm in there asking those questions, it'd be real easy to be like, well, here's somebody that literally sits in on those meetings or whatever the case may be. I've had great conversations with people inside of that organization. Not the people that sit at those seats. And I think that's why there's a level of the city feeling like there's a level of disingenuine just motives here, right? And again, I'm not going to say it's the worst thing in terms of the age, just in terms of business, creating bidding wars. Because I've said this before, if I'm Sacramento, so this is what you asked Oakland for. This is what you asked the city to pay for. This is what you put up. Out of everything that I've read from Oakland and the A's in terms of that proposed agreement for that stadium, out of everything that you guys agreed to with Vegas, this is what I would do. If I'm Sacramento, the one thing that Vegas, as beautiful as that stadium is going to be, the one thing that Vegas did not give the A's that they asked Oakland for was a waterfront stadium. If I'm Sacramento, I'm already making that phone call. Yo, Mr. Fisher, how big you want that fountain? What fountain? Don't worry about it. I'll talk to you in about 2 weeks. Give me a second. I'm drawing something up. Before you get out of this first season in Sacramento, knowing that you got to spend 2 more years here, I'm breaking ground on the ballpark here. So if you guys 2 years from now can look at this ballpark and leave, then so be it. If I'm Sacramento, I get started today. And people think I'm crazy. And I know Major League Baseball is expanding. This turns into an OKC situation. Let's say you do leave. We're getting somebody. If I'm Sacramento, I break ground before 2025 is over.
Definitely. I mean, you definitely have to have something drawn up if you're serious about this. If because you just can't let if you truly want Major League Baseball, feels like Sacramento does, or else they wouldn't have even entertained the thought of hosting the A's.
Very good point.
During this transition year. You definitely get those plans in place, just like your Salt Lake. And we saw what Salt Lake did with the Utah Hockey Club, and before that they had preseason games. The Knights played preseason games in Salt Lake City. You do that if you're Portland, right? And you see what happens with Tampa Bay. Does something happen there with Tampa Bay? Do they end up moving? And then if the expansion goes to 32, you definitely put yourself in a good position. And yeah, I think part of that is kind of frustration with, let's talk about the Las Vegas people, frustration with the A's, and they kind of have been secret or haven't really said a lot about it. Because you look at these other teams. Obviously, the NFL is the NFL; it's its own beast. But you see the Golden Knights make moves and become a winner, and you see Bill Foley kind of put his face out there. I mean, obviously, you see Mark Davis with the Aces. He's out there. He's sitting on court side, and they've made a lot of moves that have put them in a position to win a couple of WNBA titles. And there's that kind of reluctancy of he's just using us to get rich, and then he'll sell the team. Mm-hmm. And some random owner, maybe it could be for the better, but maybe it's not. I mean, you see this in Major League Baseball, like with Pittsburgh. You see these owners that just don't want to try, and it's really frustrating when you have these passionate fan bases, like in Pittsburgh, or Colorado's going through a tough time. You see Cincinnati and a lot of these other teams that are great baseball markets have potential, and their owner just isn't trying. And that's what I guess some people might be worried about. Could the Las Vegas A's be like that? Could they go through these high and low cycles where it's 3-4 years we're making the playoffs, have good guys, and then they don't want to sign them? They walk, and then it's like you're going through a couple of 100 loss seasons, and you're rebuilding, and then it's just this cycle.
Will Despard brought up the Luis Severino signing, and he was like, and then when the A's do spend money, they spend it incorrectly. And I was like, I don't want to say that, but I mean, the signing has produced what the signing has produced. I think everything you said is spot on. While you were talking, I had one question that came to mind. Let's just say that the 2 new expansion teams, because we have to get relocated teams, right? I feel like that's gotta happen. In terms of expansion, let's say Portland and Utah gets one. Like, part of me is feeling like I smell 2 NL teams, but you just talked about it. If we're expanding from 30 to 32, we want one in each. I did mention that the Angels have a minor league team in Salt Lake. Maybe that is the AL team in Utah, but I think Tampa's really interesting. And Tampa has been interesting for the last like 10 years. If you've paid attention to baseball, as much as I love the Trop, right? I said that out loud in the ballpark maybe 5 years ago, and somebody that used to work in Tampa looked at me. Why do you love it? And I was like, I'm assuming you've been there. And they were like, no, like I'm from there. And I was like, damn, it's like that. And he was like, at the end of the day, just build them a new ballpark. And I was like, well, why wouldn't they do it? He was like, well, they want to keep it in proximity. He was like, because the Rays have said, we'll stay in Florida. We'll just move to a different area of Florida. Because he was like, they're in St. Petersburg. He was like, they're not in Tampa. I said, the Trop is in St. Petersburg. He was like, so they've said, like, do you need us to go closer to the Marlins? Like, because the Marlins got a beautiful state. Like, what do we have to do? Do we have to relocate out of Florida? So you kind of just talked about it too. Of course, we're here on the West Coast. We only care about our A's if it's going to be our A's. But I'm sitting over here watching the rest of the year, or watching the rest of the world not react to Tampa either. And I don't know if maybe it's because Vegas has all the glitz and glamour and everything else, and maybe people aren't thinking about it in terms of Florida. I'm looking at the Rays, and I'm like, that's a team that produces a winner a lot more frequently. And that's a team that could probably really relocate. So as much as we're talking about what's going to happen in terms of the A's, I'm looking at Tampa, and I'm feeling like you guys aren't going to have a baseball team in a very short amount of time. And I feel like it's been inching there for 10 years. And when it finally happens, I don't think it's going to be the same crying out the way that it was for Oakland. Some people feel like Oakland was done wrong. Some people feel like Oakland tried to short. It was almost like a battle of being cheaper, right? Cool. You could feel like that, or you could feel like Oakland was wronged in the situation. 90% of people that I talk to in terms of the Rays want the Rays to get out of Tampa or St. Petersburg. And I think there's something to be said about that. And I think if that team was to relocate to a Portland or something like that, it shouldn't shock very many people. Also, if you guys are also picking up what I'm putting down, hint, hint, wink, wink, if I'm saying that stadium could be for a relocated team or an expansion team, I'm just saying if you're a Vegas baseball fan, you might want to get familiar with the Rays roster as well. That's it. I'm just saying, just keep your options open. That's it. Talking about the A's really quick, we kind of just highlighted that the 11-game losing streak is over for the A's. Willie MacGyver came up huge in that win. As a matter of fact, too, it actually ended a 9-game winning streak for Philadelphia as well. But as presently constructed, this group is last in the AL West, still coming off of that losing streak. They are 23-31. They are 7 games behind first place, a division that is currently led by Seattle with a 29-23 record. A 2-game road trip to Houston is next. That begins tomorrow, 5:10 p.m. That is the second place team in the AL West against the last place team in the AL West. We will end this with some Aviator news. I talked about those call-ups. So I need you to make me feel better about the situation, because on paper, right? On this thing right here, on this right here, it says that the Aviators lost this series. I'm gonna tell you why. Technically, it's a technicality. You ready?
Okay.
I want to see if this group can go to full first half without losing the series. They got about maybe 6 weeks left, 5 weeks left. Mm-hmm. I just want to see. But they're down 3-2 on the road in Sugarland. And I say down because today's game, they had a game that was slated to start at 11 a.m. But I told you guys the Aviators are in the middle of that 12-game stretch, right? 12 consecutive game stretch. They had 6 on the road in Sugarland. I talked about them returning home for their home series against Oklahoma City. Clearly, I'm too familiar with the roster, with the schedule from a couple of years ago. They've had back-to-back years where I believe they've played 3 at home against OKC, 3 on the road against OKC. This series against Oklahoma City coming up is a full 6-game series. It's a home series for the Aviators. So this 12-game stretch, right? They had a game this morning at 11 a.m., and they were to hop on the plane right after. They got a game tomorrow at Las Vegas Ballpark that I will be here for. The game got rained out. So the game is being made up on June 19th. So I say that to say, we do not know if the Aviators lost this series until June 19th. So as of now, the streak is still alive. I'm going to consider the streak alive. I needed you to make me feel like I wasn't crazy because in the back of my mind, I did all of that crunching last night or this morning. And I was like, if you got to talk yourself into it like that, maybe the team lost their first series of the year. But even still, we kind of just talked about it. Even if that were the case, Matt Neverett mentioned it 2 weeks ago, that if this team went 500 over the next 12 games, it would still be in first place. As of right now, the Aviators are still in first place. They are still 2 games up on Sugarland, and they are 3 games up on OKC. Speaking of OKC, that series is next, man. That series starts tomorrow, 6:35 p.m. Almost at 12 o'clock. Please don't be 12 o'clock. 6:35 p.m. I will be at the ballpark. I have my dad's tip in. And unless you have anything, Alex, I think we could do my dad's tip in and we can get out of here, brother.
I was gonna say, if you combine the scores from all the games in Sugarland, then the Aviators won this series. Makes it a 16-3 win.
I like what you think. At a certain point, I tell my dad all the time. Again, we've been in the building for those 20-2 lopsided losses, even wins sometimes. You be in the 6th inning ready to go home. You be like, I'm over this. I don't care that we're up 18-3. I'm over this. This particular group, they haven't had any downtime, right? Like everything has been good vibes because this group has always been able to, even in the worst case scenario, we pulled out 3 wins. Like worst case scenario during this week, right? So I think as long as this team continues to do that, they're in a good spot. However, you're going to see a lot of new faces down at the ballpark this particular week against the Comets. Speaking of the Comets, let's talk about my dad's tip in. I'm reading this live, so we shall see what this is about. Okay. My dad said he read a story today that reminded him. Let me just read it from his perspective. Read a story today that reminded me of something that myself and TC have talked about a few times. My dad said that I've taught him something that he never really thought about, and he said that as a reporter, no matter how much you personally feel, that's funny. We just talked about this, right? In terms of having favorite teams and things like that. By the way, this man on the screen right here, the one that I'm pointing at, that guy right there, that is a Baltimore Oriole fan, right? Yep. Grew up a Baltimore Orioles fan. You guys know how I love Manny Machado. This is somebody that is a living testament of how you hold a team accountable. Now, Alex is a lot quieter than me on the surface. Like, don't let this man fool you because of what he presents. He talks. That's why I do the show with him. He talks. Trust me. Get that man fired up about the Orioles. You'll see a completely different person. By the way, that was the biggest misconception in terms of this field. And I think I've had this conversation with you in the newsroom. I got to about 11th grade and I was like, so the world just knows that Stephen A. Smith is a Pittsburgh fan? How is that okay? Yeah. I was like, nobody cares? And then I saw the way he covered his team. I was like, oh, he does what we do in our garage. He just holds them accountable. So back to my dad's tip-in. He said that I've taught him something about the field that he never really thought about. no matter how much no matter how much you have personal feelings about a team or an athlete that you're covering, you have to stay impartial and show no emotion, no matter how exciting that game clinching moment is. By the way, you see what he did there? He did that because we had the conversation about the Florida game, that game winner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the fact that you and I are on the show that he sent this tip in there. Because we just had this conversation last week. We watched that amazing game winner and had to just look at each other. In my mind, I was like, ah! I was absolutely losing it. I was like, Lindy, what are you gonna do? No, but my dad said personally, he said he probably wouldn't keep a reporting job for long because it's hard for him to hold emotions in check when it comes to exciting sporting events. He said, especially if I'm leaning toward one team or an athlete more than the other. He said this story also brought to mind how we as fans, no matter how enthusiastic we get about an event or how much we dislike the opponent, we as fans must remember that these athletes deserve our respect and we have no place on the field, court, or ring disrespecting them. Case in point, the story that I'm referring to, and I knew where he was going, is Indiana Pacer Tyrese Halliburton's dad, John Halliburton, will be allowed to attend the Pacers home game in the suite beginning with Tuesday's pivotal Game 4 against the New York Knicks. John Halliburton has not attended a game after it was decided, and it was uniformly decided, I do want to add that as well, that he would not attend home or road games following an on-court confrontation with Milwaukee Buck forward Giannis Antetokounmpo on April 29th. He talks about not being a reporter, and then he does shit like this, which I tell him all the time is reporting, but whatever. As the Pacers celebrated Tyrese Halliburton's go-ahead layup with 1.3 seconds left in overtime that gave them a series-clinching victory over the Bucks. According to Antetokounmpo, John Halliburton walked up, waving a towel, swearing at him in a disrespectful exchange. The two were face-to-face before being pulled away by Bucks players and team security. Antetokounmpo has said that he has talked with John after the skirmish, and he said that we are, quote, in a good place. We heard that in the post-game interview. John Halliburton has since apologized on social media shortly after the game, writing, quote, I sincerely apologize to Giannis, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Indiana Pacers organization, and the Indiana Pacers organization for my actions following tonight's game. This was not a good reflection on our sport or my son, and I will not make that mistake again. I am so glad that the two are in a good place. I am glad that his apology seems heartfelt, and this just goes as a lesson. As fans, we do have to stay in our place and not overstep our boundaries. Enjoy the game, John, but stay off the court. And I also think, too, and granted, I'm not a player, right? I've told this story a million times. One of my favorite stories in general is anytime Coach Pop and my dad were able to kind of like brush shoulders, right? I have had very, very open conversations on this platform about the conversation that I heard my dad and Kemba having. I walked away from. Has nothing to do with me. Like, they're talking about the experience of USA basketball. That has nothing to do with me. My dad was there because I dead ass needed a photographer. You guys have absolutely seen me build this company. My dad has helped me plenty of times, right? I also think it's important that sometimes in these situations, I'm not even talking about just a fandom, right? But you may feel like you have opinions. You may feel like you have all of these different things until you're in a room with these people. And this can go one of two ways. Usually you're in the room with these people when you realize, hey, well, we all realize these people are human. We know what we're dealing with. And then you see them trying to will their team to victory, whatever the case may be, right? Or two, you get in a room with these people. And I heard somebody say something about the way that the Aviators were managed before. And I laughed. And I said, no, you might be right. You might be onto something. I said, but really quick, I just want to let you know, Fran is about 6'3", 230. And they looked at me like I was crazy. Fran is super cool. Fran is a chill dude. I seen Fran get mad one time. I've seen Fran get tossed a handful of times, a bunch of times, right? I seen Fran get mad at a home plate umpire one time. And I looked at Dick Calvert, I looked at DC, and I was like, hey, his buffalo is showing. And he started laughing. I was like, dog, that is a big man. And you forget that Fran used to play. Fran quick as shit. And I heard somebody just talking crazy one day about the way that the game was managed. And I was like, I think if Fran Reardon walked into this room right now, I think you would just stop talking. And Fran cool as hell.
Mm-hmm.
But Fran not little. And I think that's what happens with TV too. People think that people are minuscule. And I'll end it with this, right? Alex, we're obviously went to school together. We're around the same age. We're Space Jam kids, right? When we hear Space Jam, we're not thinking of Bron. Respectfully. Shout out to Bron. I'm thinking about 2 points. I'm thinking about Pepe Le Pew. I'm all the way back there with it, right? By the way, that's what somebody asked me, how did Tyrese make that shot in game 1 in New York? I was like, you ever seen Space Jam? 2 points. Pepe was at the top of that shot clock. He had to be. But I say that to say there have been 2 times in my life where I've met athletes and I said, this person looks like the equivalent of a Monstar, like a real one. I've never been around an athlete and felt like the person wasn't human until I got around Anthony Davis. And for all of y'all that call him soft, again, I've been around Joel Embiid. I've been around, and the second person I was going to name is Giannis. Those are the only 2 people, Anthony Davis and Giannis Antetokounmpo, that I've ever seen that made me look at them and go, he's built different. He doesn't look like he drunk a secret magic potion. That's not a normal human. So to see people like, I'm going to give you guys a different name. To see people like Brook Lopez, right? People be like, oh, Anthony Davis is weak. Anthony Davis can't even do anything down there against Brook Lopez. If you guys ever see Anthony Davis and see his frame compared to Brook Lopez, you would be astonished that AD has accomplished anything in this league. Not saying that he can't do it, but you see his frame and you'd be like, well, AD is kind of smaller. AD is freakishly tall. AD's arms probably go down to his knees. And those are the people that people be online talking crazy about. And when I brought up those 2 people saying that they kind of give Monstar like freakish like vibes, I'll end it with this. First time I ever met Giannis, right? Super respectful. It was Kostas. It was Kostas' summer league. I asked him if he could do an interview about Kostas. Giannis never said no. Giannis gave me a look almost like, and I was like, you good, dog. Like, I could tell that you don't want to take the energy from me. He was like, I appreciate you, like, for understanding. Shook his hand and I kept walking. Only 2 times have I ever shook an athlete's hands and I was like, this is unhuman-like. Remember Nene from the Denver Nuggets?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I shook his hand and I shook Giannis's hand. Upon returning to the media tables, I looked over at Brian Salmon and I said, psst. And if you watch this show, you know exactly where I'm going. I said, psst, quick question. He said, what's up? I said, how much I got to pay you to slap box Giannis? He just looked at me. He said, how much you got to pay me? I was pointing to the other side of the gym. I said, look at him. I said, he doesn't look like he plays basketball, dog. He looks like a statue walking. So again, going back to my dad's point, when I saw John Halliburton run on that court, I said, oh no. I said, somebody grab him. I said, because whatever Giannis does to him, he's on the court. I was like, oh my God. So to see Tyrese Halliburton react the way he did, and obviously, it's obviously an uncomfortable position, but he kind of reprimanded his dad publicly. My dad knows better than that. He's not supposed to do that. We've had the conversation, whatever. That's the way that he should do it. My dad, being a Laker fan, at USA basketball camp, did what all of us would do, right? You grew up a Laker fan. My dad saw Danny Ainge and was like, I hated him growing up. I was like, I know, right? And then you realize he really 6'7". And me and my dad started laughing. Y'all can say whatever y'all want online. When you get around some of these athletes, it'll make you watch your words. Until next time, gang. Keep on talking. Peace.